unfortunately. I would like to invite the country manager of World Bank or his representative. See, okay, the mic on the way. Similarly, so I want to invite the country representative from the European Union. Delegation in Sierra Leone. Are they on the way? Okay, I can start learning when they come. Oh, okay. I've just been informed that today's Thursday. The Union Country team meets on Thursdays. They might join us along the way, and we'll give them the privilege to make some statement. It is now my singular pleasure and honor to invite my Minister of Planning and Economic Development, Madam Kenimba.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, my dear brothers to me. And I stand on all existing established protocols. I was not expecting to make a statement. I was just coming to support my colleague. So you have two areas or two sections of people, groups of people will be pleased because of this. One are my staff, because whenever they do prepare statements, they're annoyed that I don't read them anyway. And then the second will be the audience, because I will be much shorter than usual. The reason why I made sure I was here today is, as everybody calls me, the custodian of the Big Five game changers, which are incorporated into the medium-term National Development Plan. So any discussion, strategic plan, validation, anything to do with the Big Five game changers, I'm always there, not always at the high table somewhere, just sitting in the corner, or I make sure I send my staff who provide feedback. The interesting thing about this particular game changer, transforming the public sector architecture, is that it is one of the most challenging. You've got the 5 game changers, and they have all been constructed in such a way that you have that synergistic impact. But the final, the number 5, is the one that is the most overlooked, but it is the most critical. And it's straightforward for us, those in the agricultural sector, fishery sector, feed salon, we know what to do. Human capital development, we know the areas to address and what to do. Youth employment scheme, likewise. Infrastructure and technology, likewise. And so when we used to have debates on the medium-term National Development Plan, you would have every sector saying how important they were. Health sector, yes, we need the health sector for people to stay alive, but if you have food, you won't be able to stay alive. If you're not educated, then you will not have workers, etc., etc. But then the Minister of Public Administration will sit down quietly in the corner and smile and say, all of you people are arguing, but if the public sector is not transformed, not any of these programs are going to go ahead. And he gave us the concept, if you've seen the schema or the diagram on the front of the medium-term development plan, in which you have a triangle, a pyramid on a base. He said, you 4 are the pillars, but transforming the public sector architecture is the foundation. If this doesn't work, none of your programs are going to make an impact. And we have always considered this very seriously in the Ministry of Planning and Economic Development. If we don't get this right, there will be limited delivery in the the feed salon program. Even down to the extension workers will not be able to deliver. Same with the health sector. There are so many problems in the health sector that are related to delivery, financing, procurement, lack of transparency, and they all stem from the reforming of the public sector architecture. So within the plan, all of these areas have been considered, and it's not just for the game changers, but also for the 5 enablers. And delivery is one of the 5 enablers. So we also capture pillar 5 under the enablers. So our being here today and our getting it right will ensure that we do deliver a successful medium-term development plan. There are so many areas that need to be addressed, which I will just touch on, because I know the keynote speaker will have to say something about these areas. But the 5 areas that we looked at that were very, very crucial were the duplication of employment patterns. We need to look at these government institutions, and I think that is a main area that this plan will address. The rationalization of mandates of ministries, agencies, directorates, commissions. That's very important. Another area is the human resources. There's a very high turnover of human resources in the public sector. And what happens is, you've got a few strong people that stay, and that's why we keep on retired public servants. These retired public servants, they all look so young, because I've interacted with them at least 20 years back, and at least like Sapulu and also Keoba, they don't look a year older than the last time I saw them. We keep them, there is a resource, but somewhere in between, middle level manpower, there is such a high turnover. And then you've got the weak human resources, the weaker, that we are not addressing. We're really not addressing, and it seems to be going from bad to worse. As I mentioned, there's also the area of the lack of transparency and a number of other areas that really need to be addressed. If we don't address these areas, we're not going anywhere. So within the plan, and I'm sure these have been incorporated into the document, the areas that we've looked at is structural alignment, an alignment of mandates, human resource management and manpower planning, public sector coordination and management, monitoring and evaluation and performance management. We're still not taking that seriously. Even within our ministry, the other day we had a conversation that we were talking about promotions, and they said, what's the criteria? I said, my criteria is performance. But in the general civil service, it's the time that you come in. Whether you perform or you don't perform, you're promoted. And I said, in my ministry, we're going to merge both of them and see, because I can't go way out of the civil service, but the change is coming when people look at performance in terms of, and not just the hours that you're seated there. The other area is e-governance, and the minister has mentioned that. We need to transform, and I think we're going to have a presentation on e-governance, so I won't go into that much detail. But there's also the area of incentives. There are two sides of the coin. You say public servants are corrupt, police are corrupt. Every area you go, there's corruption. At the end of life, there's money under the table. We have to find a way of addressing this. I see that Sule is looking at his watch, and I thought I'd be shorter if I didn't have a written statement, but I think I'm reaching the 5-minute mark. So I want to wish Mr. Minister, I want to congratulate you on this meeting. I see you have the guru giving the keynote address. So I will not talk anymore, but I just have one final comment, that gender mainstreaming, and you did mention that, is part of the plan. It's one of the principles of the plan, and it's also an enabler. Anytime we go to an event like this, the percentage of women is not up to 30%. So, Papa, we need to work on this. I know that we usually have males. You only have females probably in the medical profession, and even in education is primary school teachers. We have to really implement the Jury Act and ensure that we have 30% women in every, 30% or more, above 30%, a minimum in every profession. Having said that, I'd like to wish you well, and I look forward to seeing the output of these deliberations and the validated strategic plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Minister. Actually, my clock stopped at 5:1. Thank you very much. I think we have a presentation that's going to go online now. It's from the Center Agency for Organization and Administration from Egypt. May I kindly ask the speaker to come? And Madam Minister, please. You can, yes, give the cue and he can comment. Mr. Minister, please.
Hello, Professor, you can go on. Ma'am.
Listen, can you hear me?
Yeah, clear.
Good. Listen. Honorable Ministers, dear brother Minister Amara Kanoun, distinguished guests, at the outset, allow me to extend my congratulations to the government of Sierra Leone for embarking on this ambitious and transformative journey. The reform of public service architecture is a reflection of the vision and commitment of a nation that aspires for greater governance, efficiency, and service to its citizens. It's a landmark achievement that signifies the resolve to build a public sector capable of responding to the ever-evolving needs of society and adapting to the challenges of the modern world. Today, we are not just validating a strategic document, but rather witnessing a new era for Sierra Leone, where the public sector is revitalized to foster sustainable development, improve service delivery, and enhance good governance. Let me briefly highlight the following points. Why the public sector reform is important. Needless to say that the public sector serves as the backbone of any nation. It is the foundation upon which the delivery of essential services rests. The way in which the public sector is structured and operates has a direct impact on the daily lives of the citizens. An efficient, transparent, accountable public service architecture is crucial for fostering the trust between the government and its people. It is this trust that forms the bedrock of societal cohesion and progress. The revamp of Sierra Leone's public service architecture, therefore, is not merely an administrative exercise, but a vital step toward achieving national development goals. By aligning the public service with the principles of good governance, inclusivity, and innovation, Sierra Leone is laying an important foundation in its march towards a brighter and more prosperous future. The Egyptian journey of public sector reform. In Egypt, we have traveled a similar path for public sector reform. Over the years, the government has implemented strategic reforms aimed at modernizing the public service, ensuring transparency and equal opportunities in recruitment and promotions, enhancing the capabilities of civil servants, improving the national institutional efficiency and effectiveness, and improving service delivery to our citizens. These reforms have not been without their challenges, but through resistance and a clear vision, we have achieved significant milestones. We have learned valuable lessons that I'm confident will resonate with Sierra Leone's journey. First and foremost, reform emanated from the strong will and support of our leadership. It was based on a clear commitment from the highest level of government to ensure that the vision is not only well articulated but also implemented in a consistent and sustainable manner. Secondly, public sector reform must be people-centered. The ultimate goal is to improve the lives of the citizens, and as such, the voices of all stakeholders must be heard and incorporated into the reform process. Finally, reform is an ongoing process. It's not just a one-time event, but a continuous effort to adapt to changing circumstances, technologies, and societal needs. We stand ready to share our experiences, knowledge, and good practices with Sierra Leone through cooperation in different areas of public administration reform, among them but not limited to legislative reform, capacity building, digitalization, and technical assistance. We are committed to supporting Sierra Leone in achieving its public sector reform goals. By learning from one another, we can accelerate progress and address any challenges. In terms of the pillars of the strategic reform of the public sector in Egypt, in my view, among the core pillars that underpins the successful transformation of public service architecture are the following, and of course, in addition to the legal reform. First, institutional restructuring. A well-restructured public sector is essential for ensuring that responsibilities are clearly defined, resources are optimally allocated, and accountability mechanisms are firmly in place. Second, capacity building and human resources development. The heart of the public sector lies in its people, civil servants, who are dedicated to serving the public with integrity and excellence. Investing in their skills, knowledge, and professional development is critical to achieving long-term reform success. Third, digitalization and technological innovation. In today's rapidly changing world, the use of technology is indispensable in streamlining processes, reducing inefficiencies, and enhancing transparency. E-governance solutions and digital transformation are integral components in modern public service architecture. Fourth, good governance. It's through transparency that the trust in public institutions is built. And it is through accountability that citizens are assured the government is working in their best interests. Strengthening these principles will not only enhance governance, but also ensure the sustainability of the reforms. In conclusion, I'm confident that the validation of this strategy today marks the beginning of a transformative journey that will positively impact every aspect of Sierra Leone, from governance to service delivery, from education to healthcare, and from economic growth to societal development. Once again, we commend the leadership and people of Sierra Leone for their commitment to the public sector reform. Your dedication to building a better future for your country is truly inspiring, and I have no doubt that you will achieve the ambitious goals you have set. I pledge our continued support as you embark on this journey. Together, through collaboration, shared knowledge, and unwavering determination, we can build a brighter and more prosperous future for all. Thank you so much. And now there is a video, as an example of the reform we already have achieved. Thank you so much again. وحتى الآن تم تقديم أكثر من 76,000 لمختلف الوظائف، وكانت فيه العديد من المسابقات للجهاز المركزي للتنظيم والإدارة بينسق مع الجهة فيما يتعلق بالاحتياجات من الموارد البشرية بعد تنسيق نرفع مذكرة العرض في 5 رئيس فيما يتعلق بعدد الوظائف المطلوبة بالإعلان عنها وتطبيق الإعلان وإعادة مرات المسابقة وما إلى ذلك من التفاصيل. أنا بمعنى التصديق في خلص الرئيسية ونبدأ تنفيذ المسابقة.
نوعية الأسئلة اللي فعلا الأسئلة بتقص كل حاجة محتاجة الموظف دلوقتي. أي حاجة بتشتغل في أي بيت عامل لازم يبقى بيقص الحاجات اللي احنا بنستخدمها. زي مثلا أول حاجة البدايات الجزئية كانت دايما بتفرق مدى تعاملي أو مدى مخاطرتي في مواقف معينة. فدي أنا شايفاها حاجة كويسة جدا، وكمان بيدي مدى مسؤولية بحس إن الأسئلة بتتفرج ضروري حلو جدا فكرة إن هو مش أي وقت ولا أي بيبقى له اختيار قدامه. كمان الأسئلة الأسئلة بيبقى عشوائي جدا، مثلا ممكن يبقى داخل في الجهاز ده 1000 سؤال احنا بنجيبهم بس 30، اللي جاي يجيبهم 30 تاني، اللي جاي يجيبهم 30 تاني. التنوع في الأسئلة ده بيفيد جدا في مانجمنت الشغل الجاي. كمان لاحظت حاجة مهمة جدا إن بيقيس المهارات اللغوية في العربي والإنجليزي. احنا بنحتاج قوي إن احنا نكتب خطابات، وكنت بشوف صراحة يعني الأخطاء اللغوية بتبقى فادحة.
طريقة اختبار جيدة فعلا. احنا قبل كده كنا بنمتحن امتحانات، يعني انا في محافظة أسوان فكل لما يكون في سفر او كده ما كنتش باجي، لان طبعا لما يكون ده موضوع الشفافية مؤثر معاك في موضوع الاختار بيتم ازاي او الامتحان بيتم ازاي، لكن بالطريقة الجديدة دي الواحد لا فعلا بيجي من أسوان وعارف ان هو لو كواليفايد هيتم اختياره. والله هو الامتحان كويس ومؤثر متنوع بتقيس مدى افكار المتقدم بشأن هذه الوظيفة ومدى مستواه العلمي ومدى تفكيره. والحقيقة أشكر رئيس اتحاد التنظيم والإدارة ورئيس التنظيم والإدارة جميعا لتنظيم في سير عن إجراء هذا الامتحان.
Thank you very much. So what the video is showing the Center of Excellence that has been established in Egypt. It's a one-stop shop recruitment center, and fortunately I was there with my elder, my uncle, Keoba, together with the director of PSRU. This is they have digitalized the entire recruitment system, and artificial intelligence is at the center of everything. So the human contact has been minimized to at least 10%. So everybody in Egypt now knows that you will be recruited by what you know and not about how much who knows you. So this is what we are looking at as a case study and see how we can replicate it in Sierra Leone, customize it to what can be done in Sierra Leone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. For the start, we can Mr. Minister, for instance, you can come to the Foreign Service Academy. We have technological facilities that will enable you to do what you just saw. I'm doing better. I have 2 classrooms of 66 computers of the highest grade, so you can start by coming to the academy. Not gratis, of course. Not gratis, of course. Anyway, thank you very much, Mr. Minister. I was grateful if you would kindly convey our appreciation to the professor there for his wonderful presentation. Thank you. And we look forward to seeing you in Freetown sometime.
We look forward to seeing you in Freetown soon.
Regards. Thank you very much. Now we move on. I have the name of a beautiful lady who will come to tell us who our guest of honor is for the day. And I'm sure most of us do not know him. We've seen him. All of us will see them on television. So it is my pleasure to invite Madam Salima Toen Kamara, Director of Planning Policy and Research, to please come and introduce. Yes. Give her a big hand. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Honorable Ministers, Deputy Ministers, Development Partners, and all protocol observed. My task this morning is to introduce the keynote talk of the validation of the Public Service Strategic Master Plan for the revamp of the public service architecture with the theme, We Reform to Revamp. This individual is a seasoned administrator from the Republic of Sierra Leone. Before his appointment by His Excellency President Retired Brigadier Julius Maada Bio, his experience in governance spans 3 decades. He comes with a lot of experience that runs deep into economic development, public policies, governance, and several other areas. He has served in different strategic levels within the government of Sierra Leone, United Nations, private consultancy, and as an academic in the field of economic development, public policy, governance, to name but a few. He is also a conflict management and development associate. However, due to his extensive experience in public service governance, he was appointed as an advisor on governance before his current position. In his current capacity, he represented the government of Sierra Leone at the tripartite meetings, effectively conveying the government's position and contributing to the peace we now enjoy. Additionally, he is a recognized training expert. There is much more to say about this gentleman, but without further ado, please join me with a thunderous applause to welcome the Secretary to the President in the person of Dr. Emmanuel Revamp.
The chair of the occasion also happens to be the executive director of Sierra Leone's Premier Foreign Service Academy, Ambassador Sule Darami, Honorable Minister of Planning and Economic Development, members of parliament, soon to be here, our distinguished government partners, who I believe in the spirit of partnership and conviviality will come when they are finished with the business of the day. Colleagues in the public service ecosystem, particularly the leadership present here, and other colleagues both on the middle and those aspiring to be in the middle. My colleagues in the CSO sector, having once been a country director of international NGOs, so still colleagues. The people who make the people know and understand what happens around our brothers and sisters in the media. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, there was any existing protocol established. Permit me to stand on that protocol. Mr. Chairman, I normally would like occasions like this to speak freely from my heart. But being a public policy practitioner and the risk of me holding me for too long, I have decided to strip myself down. So permit me, Mr. Chairman, to go by myself to their scripts so that I have a discipline of time and consistency. Mr. Chairman, I bring you greetings from the office of the President, and I must indicate at the outset that I am humbled and elated to be part of yet another epoch-making event. The last one I was privileged and opportune to attend was at the Forest Service Academy, where the leadership of the public service, spearheaded by the Public Service Commission, the constitutionally recognized authority for human resource management in the Republic, hosted us to the validation of the public service draft policy. Mr. Chairman, I'm also pleased upon reflection and in receipt of the invite from Obama to be the keynote speaker to reflect on what His Excellency the President, Brigadier Retired Dr. Julius Malaki said in 2018. He said on quote, when elected as President of the Republic, I will ensure that there is an efficient management of the states. It gives me relief that His Excellency's vision then is at work. And I want to congratulate each and every one of you here who did that vision of 2018 still be a vision that's alive. The chairperson, someone may want to ask the question, a very pertinent question, why public sector reform? Why revamp the public service? These may look like simple questions, but they are valid questions. As a theory of practitioner, I want to walk you through why I think this is important. First and foremost, a reform of this nature provides an opportunity for us to stock take. We look back, we look how far we've come, we look at what progress we've made, we look at what challenges we've encountered, and then we try to document, we analyze, and we try to also preposition ourselves to see if we can address. Secondly, when you reform the public service and any other reform in the public sector, you introduce agility. You also ensure that there is responsiveness to address the challenges that may be impeding progress of national development. So that also makes it very important for us to undertake a reform. Also, when you reform, you right-fit the public service institutions and agencies. The Minister of Planning was speaking about alignment. To right-fit simply means that when state or public institutions are established, it is not in every instance that the legislations that create them are getting right at first instance. Because for those of you who are in the domain of governance, you know when we develop bills and proposals, they are built on assumptions. The assumptions will hold true, sometimes they may not hold true. So when you do a reform, you are trying to test whether in fact the assumptions of yesterday are still valid today. If they are not, then you go for the right fit exercise. But even more importantly, ladies and gentlemen, we reform because we want to sanitize the policy, the legal and the regulatory environment. We remove conflicts, we address gaps and lacunas, and also we address inconsistencies. In final analysis, we reform because we want to strengthen the basis of governance effectiveness, leading to improved service delivery and overall constructive national and sustainable development. Mr. Chairperson, some recent priorities and public sector resource initiatives in Sierra Leone undertaken by the government need to be brought to the fore. Prior to the ascendancy of His Excellency the President, previous administrations have also undertaken some of this. I want to list a few. At the end of the war, there was a restoration of civil authority agenda that brought back the states to a civil status. We had the National Recovery Strategy, we have the National Recovery Plan, and this was done in partnership with entities like the United Nations Development Program, BFID, and a host of other entities. We also have had an opportunity in this country to have the first generation of public sector reform strategy. That strategy enabled us to look at the civil service again, the civil service post-independence, the civil service that was bedeviled by rapid constitutional changes leading to one-party states and taking us out of one-party statism and also moving us to multi-piece local governance reform, which was approved in 1972, and which we thought could be a vehicle to not only enhance participation and inclusivity, but also create space for rapid socio-economic development. We decided to dismantle the Central Tender Board for efficiency, and we introduced the National Public Procurement Reform, giving us the National Public Procurement Authority. We also were being charged that we are a corrupt nation, a failed nation. Government also in this country embarked on a strategic reform of our governance landscape, our public sector landscape, to make sure that we become more transparent and efficient. We introduced the Anti-Corruption Commission. Also, after the war, we realized that our security sector was bedeviled with a lot of crises. There was lots of focus on mandate and responsibility. The constitutionality of the security sector was compromised, so again, we undertook a security sector reform. And more recently, under His Excellency's leadership, we are again embarking on the second generation of the justice sector reform. Ladies and gentlemen, reform has been alive in this country, and reform is on the way. Chairperson, theories of public administration, despite their intellectual disagreements. Intellectual disagreements is the beauty of academia. They have agreed on a few things that public sector reform should undertake. First and foremost, if we want to undertake any serious reform, we must have a very deep understanding of the political and economic drivers. What brings change? What obstructs change? What will be the impediment to change? What will be the incentive to change? These are things we all understand if we do political economy analysis. We must also understand the process side. The minister will have to develop papers. He will have to go to cabinet. He will have to go to parliament. And the parliament will have to ratify. There have to be regulations. There have to be rules. The process side of reform needs to be understood. We also have to do what we call problem identification and classification. What are the problems? Capacity state issues, probabilities issues, resource constraints. Do we have outdated institutions, outmoded laws, non-existing policies? We also have to ensure that we carry the people on whose behalf we are doing the reform. So therefore, consultation, Mr. Minister, must be an ongoing process. And all of this should terminate into continuous consensus building in what I want to call an iterative process of cycle of planning, discussing, thinking, agreeing, and all. Chairperson, there are often concerns that there is no rationale despite justifications given for public sector reform. I want to walk you through that there are indeed concerns, but these concerns could be addressed. Proponents of public sector reform defend it as the mechanism that gives government the ability to look at its capacity, to look at the efficiency margin, to introduce effectiveness, to reintroduce and strengthen integrity, to make sure that cause of accountability and responsiveness are built in the system. If you don't undertake reform, these are things that you will aspire to, but you will hardly be able to realize them. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, there is need to highlight to the point that public sector reform is unlikely to produce desired results in the absence of consensus. If all of us here decide, some of us here decide not to be on board, there will be no reform. All of us, I mean all of us, have to be on board for reform to take place. Therefore, we have to undertake political bargaining, which means, Mr. Minister, the position is important. Other stakeholders that are not present is more important. We have to also make sure that we undertake contestations in a very civil manner. I agree, I disagree. Why do you agree? Why do you disagree? We also have to make sure that in a very objective and rational manner, we look at current and existing structures, procedures, and systems. Again, we should not forget that we have to look at entitlements and people's expectations. If they not take care of the entitlements and expectations, genuine partnership in reform will be seen. Chairperson, As we assemble to validate the transformative strategy and make history again, I want to kindly crave the indulgence of this audience for me to just give it a little bit of more guiding posts. Mr. Minister and members of the Papa, there is need for you to look at a right fit between context and institutional reform. We just listened to a video from the Arab Republic of Egypt. I want us to see that as a framework for what we can share on the solution. Let's be context conscious. Let's have a right fit of context to lead, context to reform. Otherwise, the one size fits all may have its own implications going forward. Second, I want us, before we decide on the form of public sector reform we want to look at, let's be in agreement on what are the functions we desire for Sierra Leone's public service. Before we move into that, let's look at how we introduce changes in an incremental manner. How we are going to prepare our constituents, those who are anticipated to be winners of the reform, and those who are apprehensive that they will be losers of the reform. Let us also pay attention to who are going to be the implementers of this reform, and what are the competencies and skill sets to bring to the reform. In doing all this, we'll be enacting existing functional elements whereby new proposals will be meshed with older ones, with the best interest of getting a hybrid that can better serve Sierra Leone State and takes care of the deficiencies that are currently existing. We have to also take time to frame the reform. We have to ensure that once we are doing this, we situate it against our value systems and our norms. And one of the value system and norms that I'm pushing for is that we must carry our women along. So therefore, as a value system, gender has to be placed. As a value system, our unfortunate brothers and sisters by nature, by accident, who probably are disabled, must be carried along. As a value system, we should also strive not only to preach transparency, but must be seen living transparency. Another important element also I want to mention that guide the process. Reform has to be measured. The contributions to reform normally are undermined because we do reform without measurement. But the question is, what should we be measuring? How can we measure something that is politically demanded, that is complex? How can we measure something that is so dynamic? How can we measure something for which the expectations are hardly ever the same all of the time? Mr. Minister, it is important also to look at balancing national leadership and national ownership of the reform process with expertise. In as much as we may lack local expertise and local capacity, but this is a reform for Sierra Leone and must be seen to be led by Sierra Leoneans and to be owned by Sierra Leoneans. Insufficient and superficial ownership is a disaster. It's going to undermine reform. There is an imperative for technical reforms to be adopted without leaving behind also our rural changes. If we want to reform, but we still have the same attitude coming to work at 9 p.m., at 9 a.m., but going home at 4 p.m., if we still have a global tendency of what will be done today has to be done tomorrow, if we still have the tendency that I'm still sitting on the file, if our signatures are going to cost money when we're already being paid for it, then we won't have reform. Because reform also has to go to the real changes. I will have to accept those, Mr. Minister. So why the international record around ownership is religious? What it means in practice and how to create it remains contested. How I wish our colleagues on the development partnership for me to be here. The other question of what actors are relevant, donors in particular have a tendency to want to drive the reform agenda. With respect to their contribution and ownership, the individuals who sit in donor capacities are but on a tour of duty. And so, whilst we value the contributions they make, we should also make sure that they understand that the context remains ours and we have to lead the reform. Next, Mr. Minister, we have to nuance political economy analysis. There is a necessity for us to know the political economy. Whether you like it or not, in Sierra Leone, for example, there is always some sense of regional dichotomies. Reform should break those dichotomies. There is a tendency for us also to believe that the public sector is the greatest employer. Yes, it is the greatest employer. We also have to understand the fact that because the public sector is the greatest employer, there has to be pressure on the public service to more people, which has concomitant effects on wage bill and invariably on the excess resources that are there for service delivery. So, Mr. Minister, as we move on, let us avoid the danger of allowing analysis to paralyze the process of reform. If we overanalyze, we paralyze reform. So let analysis go on, but not at the expense of paralyzing reform. Because experts that come, particularly from externalities, they tend to tell us this was the way it happened in America, this was the way it happened in Indiana, the way it should happen. Minister, ladies and gentlemen, reform has to have reform managers and have to have reform champions. As we move along with this reform, I will crave your indulgence and crave the indulgence of the leadership of the public service that we start to identify reform managers and reform champions. Genuine believers. And those reform managers must ensure that they identify those of us who stick to our positions. Those of us who defend existing status quo. Those of us who believe this is the way we have been doing it. Those of us who believe it will not change. And those of us who believe it is not going to succeed. The reform managers should be there to help us. In doing all of this, Mr. Minister, at the risk of being an alarmist, there are likely to be challenges. Chairperson, there are inherent challenges to genuine public sector reform. The difficulty regarding public sector reform and related process approaches to reform is the constraint they face from the politicians and the bureaucrats. The biggest obstacle to reform are the politicians and us, the bureaucrats. The politicians are in a hurry. Us, the bureaucrats, want to temper them down, and then we have a collision. The bureaucrats, we think we have time. The politicians think they have time limits. And therefore, in the process, we don't have time to negotiate and we clash. The chairperson, ladies and gentlemen, kindly permit me to reiterate that public sector must be problem-driven focus. We should look at solving problems. And therefore, at this point, by conclude, Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, I also want to suggest some tidbits that will fit into the proverbial way forward. One, given the weak national, institutional, and human capacities in Sierra Leone, it is advisable to start reform with simple activities. Strengthen accountability and performance before recommending to government to take gigantic steps. Next, reformers must distinguish between transitional capacity difficulties. I know sometimes you are frustrated and things are not moving. Those transitional capacity challenges, those transitional roadblocks will exist. They should serve to test your endurance and resilience. They should not deter you from continuing. Resilience and determination will make you overcome that. Next, long-term reforms must be deeper. They must not be superficial. Because if you don't think deeper, the response will only be for a limited period. So as you try to probably get your report card with 100% delivery of a performance contract, think beyond your ministerial leadership, think beyond the administration of President Leone, think longer, think deeper. And there is also the issue about, and the professor mentioned it, no reform is going to be an incident or an accident. So think about it as a continuous process of thinking, of conceptualizing, of designing, of implementing, of monitoring, of assessing, and reprinting. It has been mentioned, and I don't want to overstate it, but I must restate it, that there is no way in the 21st century to focus on the public management will not talk about data and digitalization. Why? Decision-making and management was going to be simplified. Given the work volume, given the multiplicity of tasks, given the need for speed and efficiency, given the need for accelerated delivery and service delivery, it is us what's useful that we embrace digitization and data management as part of the process. Ladies and gentlemen, this can be scary, but we will not succeed to reform the public service in Sierra Leone if we do not streamline the bureaucracy. As a bedrock of the public service, particularly the civil service, public sector reform needs to ensure that the bureaucracy is streamlined. You have to have proper job definitions. You have to have proper job classifications. We have to prioritize, obviously, civil service. We have to make sure that competency mix are right, and we have to make sure that everybody is catered for. Those challenges will not be deterred. Professional development and employee training. Right skilling and upskilling is what gives us the engine to drive the public service. Mr. Minister, successful public sector reform must put at the center right skilling and upskilling of the staff. And this has to be done both ways, both supply driven and demand driven, so that the pool of capable, efficient, effective, and willing workforce will be available to drive reform. There is also the issue of the power dynamics. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chair, there is going to be tension between ministries, departments, and agencies. There is going to be tension between competing interest groups. There is going to be tension in the political debate for change. And of course, more importantly, this reform is going to be under attack when it comes to elections, because other political parties will have manifesto commitments that will differ from this. You have to prepare for all of this. You have to prepare for all of this so that the reform stands the test of time. And the final warning I will give is that, please, ladies and gentlemen, the reform must remain realistic. The capacity of the structures to support widespread reform must be done in terms of assessment. It is good to think big, but it's more desirable to think right. It is good to bite, but it's more desirable to chew. It is good to chew, but it's more desirable to swallow. So therefore, bite, chew, and swallow at the right proportion. To conclude, Chair, developing countries may have limited capacity to implement public sector reform, but that does not mean that they should be deterred from it. Institutions need to be strengthened for reform readiness. Reform should be sequenced to confirm the capacity. And political capacity building of even the political class should be done for reform system. If this is done, reform should lead to change, and change should lead to development. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. So, I think you did not go over and you only doubled your time. Thank you very much. And you support that. Thank you so very much. Before we go to the next session, let me take the opportunity to thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and for the privilege, the opportunity given to us to learn a lot about public service running. We do hope that the Ministry of Public Administration and Public Affairs will take the good parts of business of advice. Let me just recap for the benefit of those of us who just come in, and for those of you who will continue the sessions. Right at the beginning, the two ministers from Ministry of, they call it, what's your acronym? MOPAPA. It's a beautiful one, MOPAPA movement. The two ministers of MOPAPA just emphasize the relevance and need for reform. In all their brief statements, that is what they were saying. And I hope you got that from what they said. The Minister of Planning and Economic Development, amongst others, not surprisingly, reminded us of gender balance, and which we do appreciate. And I apologize for the absence of more than two women on the high table. The lack of space would not allow us to provide more sitting accommodation, but we take that into consideration. Next time, I assure you we'll have at least 30% of women on high table in occasions like this. But she also mentioned the participation and training of youth in our reform processes. And I hope you take that into consideration. Then, of course, our international guest from Egypt gave us the opportunity for comparative studies and analysis and to look at what obtains outside of Somalia. He gave us a taste of international best practices, of encouraging words, because he knows, he's tested it, how reform is difficult, how it is challenging, how almost seemingly impossible it will appear. But he therefore encouraged us to continue to. Then, of course, for our guest speaker, I do hope, Mr. Minister, you do have rapporteurs for this. Do we have rapporteurs for this? Yeah, I do hope you get a copy of what you got from guest speaker. But what I gathered, I could give about 6 important points he mentioned. The first one was the importance of reform and why we should reform at all. He gave very concrete examples of why we need reform in this country. I hope you consider that. He provides specific pieces of advice that I do hope Mupapa will look into. He mentioned the disabled. I think he was the only one who mentioned the disabled here, and I think that should be taken. That's inclusiveness in our program. I'm sure you took that into consideration. He emphasized the thing I like best was the Sierra Leonean-ness of reform. We left for copy. We copy on some other side of Calcutta. Let it be Sierra Leone. Let all of you are capable people in this room, suitably qualified and capable of leading reforms in your respective areas. From where I sit, I have seen